Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. This clip is going to be a significant one for the students of English literature as well as for the competitive jobs aspirants. So let's explore the topic for you all. In this clip, I am going to explore the different stanza forms of poetry. Hope you all will like this content. So let's discuss these stanza forms one after another. We know that poetry is a significant literary genre of all time, and a poem may be of one line, two lines, three lines, or of any line. Regarding this, here I will unravel the different stanza forms based on the used line numbers. The very first stanza form is all about a single line, that is, a stanza of one line only. This stanza form is called monostage, or in other words, a monostage is a stanza of one line, or it's a complete poem in one line. After monostage, here comes couplet. What is about a couplet? A couplet is a stanza of two lines. And for example, we must refer to the Shakespearean sonnets because a Shakespearean sonnet is having a couplet consisting of the last two lines. In my previous clip, I have already discussed the stanza form in detail while discussing the sonnet form and the Shakespearean sonnet. So, after a stanza of one line, here comes a stanza having three lines. So, what is the name for a stanza of three lines? Here we must remember it is called tarset, or tarset can be a full poem of three lines or a specific stanza of a particular poem. For examples of tarsets, here we must mention the Petrarchan sonnets because you all know a Petrarchan sonnet of two parts. The first part is called octave and the second part is called sestet. And here a sestet is divided into two tarsets having the rhyme scheme of CDC, CDC, or having the variation CDE, CDE. The next poetic stanza form is quatrain. Then what is about a quatrain? Here we must know a quatrain is a poetic stanza of four lines, like that of the couplet. Here we must move back to the Shakespearean sonnet once more to get the example of the quatrain, because a Shakespearean sonnet is having three quatrains comprising the first three stanzas. After a quatrain, the next important poetic stanza form is quintains or quintet, or it is also known by the term cinquain. Then what is about a quintain or a quintet? Here we must remember the Latin word quint, which means five. And that is why the very terms quintain or quintet are the poetic stanza forms of five lines. This poetic stanza form is also very much popular in the history of English poetry. The next term that I am going to mention here is all about the 7 lines stanza form. And this poetic stanza form, having 7 lines, is known by the term hexastitch. This form is also having another name, that is sestet. So, a hexastitch or a sestet is having 6 lines only, or in other words, a sestet or a hexastitch or a section are the stanza forms having 6 lines. Once more, like that of the sonnet forms, like that of the tercet, which was very much prominent in the Petrarchan sonnet, once again we need to mention the Petrarchan sonnet form to get the ready-made example of sestet or hexastitch, specifically sestet, because in the Italian sonnets or the Petrarchan sonnets there is a specific sestet part. Most importantly, the last part of the Petrarchan or Italian sonnet, which comprises only 6 lines. The next term is called septet or heptastitch. Then what is about this septet or heptastitch? These are the very poetic stanza form of 7 lines. Here is another name to describe the septet, heptastitch, or the poetic stanza form having 7 lines. What is this very term? This is rhyme royal. Then, very interesting, the name itself, rhyme royal. Why is it called rhyme royal? Here we must remember this rhyme royal form was introduced by Geoffrey Chaucer, who is also called the father of English poetry. And Geoffrey Chaucer introduced this rhyme royal form in the 14th century. But it is called rhyme royal. Why? What is the use of this very word royal in this regard? Because in the 14th century itself, it was used by King James the First of Scotland, or he employed this stanza form in his poetry, which is why this 7 line stanza form is also popular, having the name of rhyme royal. Now, the next poetic stanza form is octave, which is having another variation, that is octet. It is also called octastretch. Now, what is about this very form, octave, octastretch, or octet? Here, the very word oct is or octo is really prominent. Here we must remember the information that Latin word octo means 8. So this way the forms like octave, octastretch, or octet actually refer to a poetic stanza form having 8 lines. Now, like that of tercet and sestet. For the case of octave, once again, we need to move back to the world of the Petrarchan or Italian sonnet, because a Petrarchan sonnet is divided into 2 parts, and the first part itself is called octave because it consists of 8 lines only. To be more specific, the first 8 lines. This is something about the poetic stanza form entitled octave, octastretch, or octet. The next poetic stanza form is really interesting, It is called No Net, and it is a poetic stanza form having 9 lines. And this very form is having another name that is called Spenserian stanza. Very interesting the name Spenserian stanza is. Now here comes another point. Why is this particular term, particular poetic stanza form called Spenserian stanza? In this regard, we must remember the information that this stanza form, that is the Spenserian stanza, was named after the 16th century English poet Edmund Spenser. And as per its structure is concerned, it is made of 8 iambic pentameter lines along with a last line of iambic feet, 6 iambic feet to be more specific. And its rhyme scheme is AB AB, BC BC, and here is another C. That is the last line having 6 iambic feet. So already we talked about 9 stanza forms of poetry, beginning from line 1 up to line 9. Now, the next poetic stanza form that I am going to mention here is all about 10 lines. In other words, here we are going to mention a poetic stanza form having 10 lines. Here, the term is Dizion, and Dizion is also a very interesting term because dis, the very word, means 10 in French. So this way it's a term which is related to the poetic stanza forms, and it is having 10 lines. So these are the different names of the poetic stanzas comprising 1 line, 2 line up to line 10. So in this clip I have talked about the different stanza forms of poetry. Thank you very much for watching the clip. In the next video, I will again appear with some other interesting contents. So, please like, share and subscribe to my channel, and also press the bell icon to get the updated contents. Thank you very much.